Thank you. Apologies, I was only told about an hour ago that I was actually doing a presentation, so this is not really geared for a visual like this. But look, I mean, Anglesey's been around for a long time. I think a lot of people would recognise that, and I certainly do myself. There's been a lot of false starts here. I started 3 months ago with the intention of spending most of my time on Parys Mountain. We have some iron ore assets as well that we will touch on very briefly, but this will focus primarily on the Parys Mountain project. I mean, in terms of investment highlights, a lot of people might not know this about Parys Mountain, but it does have a 17 million tonne resource. It's a VMS, typical metal sweet, about 2% copper equivalent. The company completed an updated PEA in January this year, which demonstrated some very strong returns from what I consider to be a fairly bite-sized capital outlay. Again, unbeknownst to a lot of people, there is still a lot of exploration upside here, which I'll go into in a minute. Yeah, the potential for low carbon copper. I mean, it sounds a bit cliched, but yeah, when you look at Anglesey as a location at the moment, one of the biggest industries there is renewable energy, and there are 3 wind farms within 3 kilometres of the mine site, and potentially another one being discussed. In terms of jurisdiction, I mean, it's North Wales. There's a substantial amount of infrastructure in place, including, head frame, shaft down to 300 metres. There's 1,000 metres of underground development. We have roads. There's a switch on site for power. We have access to a rail. There's a rail from Amlook through to the Port of Holyhead, which is not up and running at the moment, but it's the Conservative MP has that as one of her targets to get that up and running. And we have, most importantly, we have a lot of the planning permission in place for this project. In fact, in 1991, the project actually had full planning permission when they sunk the shaft. There was a pilot plant on site, operating at 1 tonne per hour, and processed a bulk sample of 2,000 tonnes and sent the concentrate down to Avonmouth for smelting. We also have the leverage to iron ore. So I won't really talk about this too much now, but we have the Grangesberg project. We own 20% of the Grangesberg project in Sweden. Until 1989, it was the second largest iron ore mine in Sweden, producing 4 million tonnes per annum. We're just currently updating the pre-feasibility study there, which hopefully we'll have those results in the new year. In terms of Parys Mountain, I mean, when I talk to people about Parys Mountain initially that sort of are aware of it but don't really know the story, they say, well, it's a big environmental mess and you'll never get it permitted. Well, that's the environmental mess, and that is everything you see there on the right-hand side of the road is the historic workings. And by historic, I mean this thing goes back to Bronze Age, 4,700 years ago, when the Romans had a go. And then in the 18th and 19th century, at one point it was the biggest copper mine in the world. So there is a lot of history here. I think it's very important to point out that in terms of the old site, this flat area here is fully permitted for a plant processing plant. It's the only bit of the project on that side of the road we use. We own the land, the bulk of the land freehold. We've committed a lot to the community with respect to putting a car park up there. There's walkways around it, and it's a very important part of the heritage of the area. So we're very, very cognizant of that. But importantly, we have no environmental liability on it either, and we'll be very keen to make sure that what we do going forward and what's occurred in the past is very separate. The PEA. I mean, a PEA is a PEA. I mean, this is the mine design as it looks. I think ultimately it will look different, as they always do. Within the different zones, this is the engine zone and White Rock zone, engine zone. They're very well drilled out. Between those two zones and the lower engine, there's about 7 million tonnes, grading north of 2%. And then this is the Northern Copper Zone. It's largely inferred. These sort of square blocks that are missing out of the mine design, it's just lack of data. I mean, there hasn't been a drill hole put in the Northern Copper Zone for 12 years. It was discovered in 1962. There's about 35 holes in it, or 40 holes in it, and there's some very interesting stuff that's never been followed up. So there's a lot of work to do there. But in terms of the PEA, for $99 million capital, because of the benefits of the infrastructure that are in place, it really is a decline in a process plant and a tailings facility. And that's what we're going to focus on going forward. Is we have a drill rig starting next week, which is infill drilling in this area here in the White Rock Zone, where there's a few gaps in the mine plan. We're just drilling out the inferred into indicated, and we're going to do a couple of met holes and do some geotech holes for a geotech domain model to feed into the feasibility study for next year. That drilling will take until about March, and then it's our sort of expectation that we'll just shift the rig across to the Northern Copper Zone and start drilling the Northern Copper Zone out. Metal profile, look, I mean, this will never be a huge mine. We're looking at up to 1 million tonnes per annum. That will produce between 12 and 15,000 tonnes of copper equivalent per year. Based on spot prices, it's about 40% NSR is copper, 36 zinc, and the rest sort of lead and precious metals. It's important to touch on the current permitting status. As I say, a lot of people think we'll never get it permitted. We do have an existing planning permission in place, so for all intents and purposes, if we had the money in the bank, we could actually start the construction of the mine buildings. We could commence the construction of the underground. We could start building the process plant. We're not going to do that immediately, obviously. We don't have the money. But secondly, those permits were put in place in the late 80s, early 90s, and there's been significant changes to the Planning Act. So we're volunteering a review of those permissions with the Mineral Planning Authority in North Wales, and also the local council. So I was up on site on Monday with an environmental consultant, basically looking at commencing the gap analysis on the environmental baseline. So there is a bit of work to do in terms of resetting the baseline and redoing the environmental studies. But for all intents and purposes, a lot of the planning is already de-risked. Metallurgical test work, as I say, there was a 2,000 tonne bulk sample processed in the early 1990s. Interestingly, the worst number on that slide there is that lead number. I mean, the concentrate of 44 and recoveries of 65. Sadly, that was completed that was using core that was 11 years old, and so the gleaner was highly oxidized. So part of this round of drilling is we'll be producing quite a lot of material for final metallurgical sampling. We'll look at a gravity circuit for gold as well, because there's quite a bit of gold in the White Rock Zone that only comes out at about 35-40% recoveries at the moment. In terms of this protecting the past, I mean, this is an important slide. I've just projected all the current ore bodies up to surface here. And so that's the road I was talking about earlier. That's the plant site that's permitted. That's the shaft there. This is all the old workings. Effectively, all of our underground mining is to the northwest of the old pit, and there's a lot of extension exploration potential along strike. The tailings storage facility is permitted. These are all the old settlement ponds from the 19th century. Again, a lot has changed in terms of permitting tailings. So I mean, all of the tailings is up for review, and I'm keen to look at all aspects. The current mine plan involves putting a lot of the tailings back underground as paste fill, but we'll look at, given our capex is so low, sensitivities to doing dry stack tails and stuff like that is not actually a huge impact on the economics. I want to end on this one really, because this is what people don't understand about the project, is just the potential scale and what could be there. This is the Northern Copper Zone. These lines are 200 metre spacing, so that's about 1.1 kilometres. The wireframe of the ore body ends here. The last hole drill was up here, which was about 15 metres at 2.5% copper equivalent. It's about 600 metres between that and the end of the resource that we know it. There's no drilling down here. There's a very high grade shoot at the bottom here. I mean, these numbers are 4 at 16, 11 at 6, 6 at 4, 5 at 5. There's intersections here that if we were releasing these today, 146 metres at 1.2% copper, market would get pretty excited about it. There's a lot of unfinished business here, and we're going to take it forward. Give it a go. Thank you.